The city never sleeps. Neon lights flicker across wet streets, shadows crawling between skyscrapers, hiding secrets that no one dares whisper aloud. In this world of wealth, power, and danger, survival isn't just a choice, it's a skill. Amara, a young black woman, thought she understood hardship. She had escaped a home filled with endless fights, cared for her younger sister Nia, and navigated the cold streets alone. But nothing could have prepared her for the world she was about to enter, a world of debt, manipulation, and a Korean mafia that played life like a game of chess. She thought borrowing money from a club owner was the answer, a way to survive. She didn't realize that every dollar owed came with chains she couldn't see, a web that would trap her body, her freedom, and her very soul. And then came the men who would shape her fate, the cruel Jae-hyun, the cunning Mr. Han, and the man who would change everything, Kang Min-jun, the mafia boss whose empire was as dangerous as it was powerful. Hello. Before we go further, I want to take this moment to ask you to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to comment below where you're watching from. Your support keeps stories like Amara's alive, and you won't want to miss a single twist. Now, let's dive into the story. Amara pressed her back against the bedroom wall, trying to disappear into the shadows. The sounds of her parents fighting filled the house like an unbearable drum. Amara, stop interfering, her father, Marcus, shouted, his voice thick with anger. Her mother, Monique, slammed the door to the kitchen, the crash echoing through the hall. You're always on his side, she screamed back. The words stung more than their hands ever could. Her younger sister, Nia, sat huddled in the corner, fingers clutching the hem of her nightgown, eyes wide and trembling. Amara swallowed hard. She couldn't cry, she couldn't scream. Silence was her only shield. For years, she had carried the weight of this household alone. She had tried to mediate, to explain, to be the voice of reason, but reason never worked here. Tonight was no different. The argument dragged on until the sky outside began to lighten, the sun barely peeking through the curtains. She finally understood that staying would break her completely. It wasn't a choice, it was survival. Slowly, quietly, she packed a small bag, a few sets of clothes, a hairbrush, and a photograph of Nia she had kept tucked away. She placed a folded note beside it, meant more for herself than anyone else, I have to survive. I will protect Nia. That is all I can do. Stepping into the cold streets of the city, she felt the world around her swallow her. Neon lights flickered across wet asphalt. The distant hum of traffic mixed with the clatter of subway trains and the chatter of strangers. Nobody noticed her. Nobody cared. She liked it that way. Invisible was safer than staying inside her broken home. Hours passed as she wandered, searching for work, for a place to rest, for a chance to breathe without fear. That's when she saw it, a building pulsing with deep red and purple light. The sign above read LUX. Music spilled into the street in thick waves, laughter, bass, chatter, and the faint smell of alcohol and perfume. Her heart pounded. She hesitated at the door, but then she saw him, Mr. Han, the club owner. His eyes, sharp yet assessing, met hers. Looking for work, he asked, his voice calm, professional. No experience necessary. You can start tonight. Amara nodded, not fully trusting herself to speak. She stepped inside. The air was thick with heat and scent. She noticed the young women laughing nervously, the men who lingered too long, the way power moved invisibly across the room. The club felt dangerous, yet it offered a kind of refuge, somewhere she could earn money, help Nia, and survive another day. At first, the job seemed manageable, cleaning, serving drinks, moving quietly, and smiling when necessary. Every night she brought home a few bills, sending them immediately to Nia's care. But the sense of relief was temporary. One day, when her sister fell sick and the bills stacked higher than her earnings, Amara returned to Mr. Han. "I need help," she said softly, her voice trembling. He smiled, small, measured. "I can lend you some money," he said. "You'll pay it back when you can." Amara took the money without hesitation. She didn't notice the calculation behind his smile, the subtle weight of those words, the chain he was about to place around her life. That loan became more than a debt, it became the beginning of a life where her choices were no longer her own. She left the office clutching the cash, thinking she had found relief. She didn't know then that the streets she had fled and the walls she had left behind were nothing compared to the walls she was about to walk into. She thought she owed money. But soon, Amara would discover that in this world, debts could own her, body and soul alike. The first few nights after borrowing the money felt almost normal. Amara poured drinks, cleaned tables, and smiled when Mr. Han or the regulars watched. Every step was measured, every movement precise, but she told herself she could manage this. For Nia, for survival, for herself. But debt has a way of growing beyond its numbers. It started small. A reminder scribbled on a piece of paper, payment due tomorrow. A quiet nudge to work extra shifts. She brushed it off. Then the whispers began, customers commenting on her looks, Mr. Han leaning in too close, a hand brushing against her arm when no one else noticed. "You leave, and we'll call the police," Mr. Han said one evening, his voice low and calm, as if offering a choice she could not refuse. Her stomach turned. She knew he wasn't bluffing. A stolen dollar, a falsified claim, a missing receipt, any of it could become a legal chain binding her to him. She swallowed hard and nodded. Survival had never felt so heavy. The first time a man approached her for more than a drink, Amara froze. The way he watched her, as if she existed solely for his pleasure, made her skin crawl. She had no choice but to obey, to smile, to endure. Bruises formed quietly under long sleeves, and pain became a daily companion. She learned to hide tears in the bathroom, to laugh when she was meant to nod when she had no intention. Her friend, Lila, worked beside her silently observing. "They don't let people go easily," Lila whispered one night, voice barely audible over the thumping music. "I've seen girls disappear before. Quietly. No one notices." Amara laughed nervously at first, trying to convince herself it was an exaggeration. But the next morning, a man who had argued loudly with Mr. Han was gone. Not arrested, not missing, just erased. The table he had sat at was empty. The chair was cold. No record. No trace. Her heart pounded as the truth sank in. Debt wasn't the only chain here. Fear was. Control was. Life itself was a currency she didn't yet understand. Then Jae-hyun arrived. He was young, well-dressed, and exuded power without needing to say a word. Every movement was deliberate, every glance measured. He didn't speak at first, but the way he watched her, like a predator assessing prey, made her instinctively shrink back. He was the son of a wealthy family, part of an empire she didn't yet know existed. But he made one thing painfully clear: she was replaceable. His money bought obedience. His presence demanded it. And every time she hesitated, every time she dared think of refusing, he reminded her, softly, cruelly, that the world she had fled into was not safe. Amara's nights became a blend of survival and calculation. She measured every step, every word, every movement, always aware that one mistake could cost her life. And through it all, the debt lingered like a shadow over her head, whispering that nothing she did could set her free. Yet far above the city, someone even more dangerous than Jae-hyun was watching. Kang Min-jun, the patriarch of the family, the mafia boss whose name alone inspired fear, had noticed her. Quietly. Calculatingly. He saw the girl trapped by Mr. Han and Jae-hyun, and he saw potential, a way to shift the balance of power in his fractured empire. Amara didn't know it yet. She was a pawn in a game that spanned family, money, and power. And when Kang Min-jun finally made his move, her life would change forever. She thought her debt was only numbers. She didn't know it was the first link in a chain that would bind her to a world far darker, and far more dangerous, than she could imagine. The neon lights of LUX pulsed like a heartbeat, red and purple washing over everything in the room. The bass of the music throbbed in Amara's chest as she moved between tables, carrying glasses she didn't always see, weaving through the crowd like a ghost. Every night, the club became a labyrinth, a place where smiles hid danger and laughter masked fear. Amara had learned quickly, nothing here was what it seemed. The girls in glittering dresses smiled constantly, but their eyes told another story, stories of debts, disappearances, and whispered warnings. Men who lingered too long, men with sharp eyes and sharper intentions, made her skin crawl. The club wasn't just a workplace. It was a training ground, a battlefield, a prison where shadows ruled. She was grateful for Lila, her only friend here. Together, they navigated the maze of tables, orders, and patrons. Lila's quiet presence grounded her when the world threatened to spin out of control. "Watch the corners," Lila whispered one night, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "They're always watching. Don't let them know you notice them." Amara followed the advice instinctively. Every glance, every movement, became part of a delicate dance. She learned the rhythms of the club, the way the doors clicked when someone entered, the subtle hierarchy of patrons, the soft warning signs that trouble was near. Every shift was a test, and failure wasn't an option. Then Jae-hyun appeared again, leaning against a bar counter like he owned the place, though he was just a visitor. His eyes landed on her, sharp and calculating, and her pulse quickened. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He walked closer, his presence a silent demand, obey, or face consequences. "You're learning," he said, voice low and almost casual. "But I wonder how far you'll go before you break." Amara forced herself to nod. Words were dangerous. Silence, compliance, movement, these were her tools. And yet, a flicker of defiance rose within her. She had survived so far, she reminded herself. She could survive more. But survival wasn't just about obeying Jae-hyun or Mr. Han. It was about watching the shadows that moved unseen. She noticed the man who had been missing days ago, he hadn't just vanished. She caught whispers among the staff, rumors of a silent punishment, of people erased without trace. Fear became a tangible weight, pressing against her chest every time she stepped onto the floor. One night, a wealthy client tried to grab her arm as she passed a table. She yanked it free, nearly toppling a drink. Mr. Han's cold gaze met hers from across the room. There was no anger, no reprimand, just a silent reminder. Her body, her choices, her life, they weren't her own. The debt had grown beyond money, it was now obedience, silence, fear. Through it all, she noticed a presence in the shadows, Kang Min-jun, observing quietly from a private corner. He didn't speak, didn't interact, yet his eyes followed her movements. There was a calculating intelligence in his gaze, a sense that he understood exactly what she endured. Unlike Jae-hyun, unlike Mr. Han, he wasn't testing her, he was assessing, waiting for the right moment to intervene. Amara felt a chill. She didn't know him yet, didn't know the weight of his power. But she sensed that her life was about to shift. The chains of debt were tightening, and yet, in the quiet shadows of LUX, a new kind of opportunity was forming, one that could either save her or trap her even deeper. The sun controlled her nights. The shadows controlled her days. And the man in the corner, the one no one spoke to, was about to make a move that would change everything. Jae-hyun's presence was suffocating. Every time Amara stepped onto the floor, she felt his eyes like knives, cutting through her confidence, measuring her fear. He didn't speak much at first, he didn't have to. His wealth, his entitlement, his sharp gaze, all of it communicated dominance without a single word. "You think you can get through tonight without me noticing?" he asked one night, his voice low and smooth, carrying just enough threat to make her heart race. She froze, clutching the tray in her hands, pretending to steady the trembling in her fingers. Amara had learned to obey, to move carefully, to bend without breaking. But obedience only went so far. Jae-hyun expected more. Every smile, every step, every nod had to be perfect. If she faltered, if her gaze lingered too long or her posture betrayed hesitation, he reminded her, softly, cruelly, and always in public, that she was replaceable. One evening, he cornered her near the VIP lounge, the pulse of music vibrating through the floor. "You think you're clever, don't you?" he said. His hand rested lightly on her shoulder, a touch meant to intimidate. "Clever won't save you here." Amara swallowed hard, forcing herself to keep her voice even. "I'm just trying to do my job." He laughed softly, a sound that sent shivers down her spine. "Do your job. This isn't a job. This is survival, Amara. And right now, you're failing." She turned away, but every step was weighted with dread. The club, which had promised work and safety, was now a prison with walls made of fear and shadows. Every movement was watched, every word scrutinized. She had learned to anticipate the consequences before they happened, but nothing prepared her for the constant unpredictability of Jae-hyun's temper. And yet, in the corner of the club, she noticed him, Kang Min-jun, silent and unassuming, observing everything. His presence was different from Jae-hyun's. He didn't threaten, didn't demand, didn't intimidate. He watched, calculating, patient, like a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Something in his eyes told her that he understood her struggle in a way no one else did. Over the next few nights, Jae-hyun escalated. His visits to the VIP rooms became longer, more invasive. He tested her limits, pushing her until her body ached and her mind trembled. Mr. Han encouraged it subtly, ensuring the debt was always a reminder that she had no choice but to comply. The money she owed him was never just numbers, it was power, control, and fear all wrapped into one invisible chain. But Kang Min-jun's shadow lingered. He noticed every unfair treatment, every bruise hidden beneath her sleeve, every whispered complaint she dared not voice. Unlike the others, he was thinking strategically. He could see her potential. Not just as a pawn, but as someone who could change the balance of power in his fractured empire. Amara didn't understand it yet. She didn't know that the Mafia boss, the man who ruled through fear and calculation, was already planning her rescue, not because he loved her, not yet, but because her survival could serve him in ways she couldn't imagine. That night, after closing, she collapsed into the small apartment she shared with Mia, tears streaming silently. She held her sister close, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. The club had taken so much, her dignity, her safety, her peace, but it had not yet broken her spirit entirely. Somewhere, deep inside, a spark of defiance remained. And somewhere, unseen, Kang Min-jun was waiting. Waiting for the perfect moment to step out of the shadows and remind everyone, including Jae-hyun, that Amara was not just a girl to be used and discarded. Jae-hyun controlled her nights. Mr. Han controlled her debts. And Kang Min-jun, he controlled the game, and he had just started playing. Kang Min-jun rarely intervened directly. Power, he believed, was about patience, observation, and timing. From the corner of his private room in a skyscraper overlooking Seoul, he watched the city pulse below like a living organism, its chaos, its beauty, its fear. And then he watched her, Amara. She moved through the streets and the club like a shadow, small yet unbroken, always measured, always cautious. Her fear was palpable, yet there was a spark he couldn't ignore. Not many survived the world she had entered. Fewer still thrived quietly within it. She was clever, resilient, and even in her despair, he could see the intelligence that allowed her to endure Jae-hyun, Mr. Han, and the invisible chains around her life. He decided it was time to act. The first step was subtle. A call to Mr. Han, brief, polite, veiled as casual business. "Keep an eye on her," Min-jun said, voice calm but firm. "She is important." Amara had no idea. She only felt a shift in the air. The club seemed different one night, less suffocating. Orders from Mr. Han were sharper, more precise, yet somehow less cruel. Jae-hyun still tested her, but the weight of unseen eyes made him hesitate ever so slightly. It was imperceptible, but for Amara, it was the tiniest crack of hope. That night, as she closed the VIP rooms, a discreet envelope slid across her path. Inside were crisp bills, far more than the amount she owed. No note, no explanation. Just the money. Her heart pounded. She looked around. Nobody had noticed. Her first thought was fear, someone was watching her, waiting to punish her. But slowly, the realization dawned, she was no longer completely alone. It was Kang Min-jun's move. A quiet, strategic intervention. He didn't announce himself. He didn't need to. In this game, the player who strikes without being seen is the one who wins. Over the next days, subtle changes continued. Jae-hyun's attention wavered ever so slightly. Mr. Han's requests became less invasive, though still present. And Amara began to notice patterns, small gestures of protection, whispers from staff who now treated her differently, doors that opened when she needed them, closed when danger approached. Yet fear remained. She couldn't forget the nights of abuse, the bruises she hid, the control of her body and life that had been bought with borrowed money. Every dollar owed had been another chain. And now, she had to decide whether to trust this invisible hand that had begun to shift the balance. Then, Min-jun appeared in person. Not in the club, not in a threatening boardroom, but quietly, in a dimly lit office where only she was allowed. His presence was calm, commanding, and yet there was no warmth. "You've survived," he said simply, his eyes studying her. "That takes intelligence. Courage. Something rare." Amara swallowed, unsure whether to respond. Words could be dangerous. Silence was safer. I can help you, he continued. But you must understand, this is not about friendship. It is about strategy. Your survival, and your usefulness. That is all. Her mind raced. What did he want? Why her? And yet, in that moment, for the first time since leaving her parents' home, she felt a spark of hope. A chance, however small, to reclaim a fragment of her life. The shadows of the city outside the window stretched long. The club, Jae-hyun, Mr. Han, all were still threats. But Min-jun had made his move. And the game had just begun. She had survived the club. She had survived debt. But now she faced a new world, one where power and danger moved in silence, and where the man above the city had just entered her life. Amara had survived the impossible, endured the fear, and navigated the shadows of Lux, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The office was quiet, the blinds casting long lines across the polished floor. Kon Min-jun sat behind the massive mahogany desk, hands folded neatly, eyes steady and assessing. You've done well, he said, his voice calm, like a quiet river concealing a current of power beneath. But surviving alone will not be enough anymore. Amara swallowed, unsure how to respond. Words felt dangerous. Her throat tightened. Fear had been her companion for so long that hope felt foreign, almost forbidden. I am offering you a way out, Min-jun continued. A way to protect yourself and your sister. A way to survive. Her pulse quickened. She had heard promises before, Mr. Han, Jae-hyun, but none had been kept. She remained skeptical, but a part of her couldn't help listening, hoping. You owe your life, Amara, he said suddenly, leaning forward slightly. The weight in his gaze pinned her in place. Not to me personally, but to circumstance, to the choices you've made. That debt can be erased, but it comes at a cost. Her stomach tightened. She had already paid in ways she could not count. And yet, this man's presence felt different. Powerful. Calculating. Not cruel, yet not without danger. You would be married to me, he said plainly. It is not for love, not for companionship. It is for survival, and for strategy. You will gain security. Mia will be protected. Your debts, paid. Amara froze. Marriage? To this man? She didn't know him. She didn't trust him. But she understood the unspoken terms. Refusal meant losing the fragile safety she had carved for herself, exposing her sister to the dangers she had worked so hard to avoid. Her mind raced. Could she survive this? Could she trust a man she barely knew with her life, her sister's safety, and her freedom? And yet, somewhere beneath the fear, a spark of defiance ignited. She had survived this long. She could survive anything, if she played the game carefully. Min-jun watched her silently, reading every hesitation, every micro-expression. Think carefully, he said. This is not a choice made lightly. Once made, it changes everything. Your life. Your sister's life. And the balance of power in this city. Amara thought of Mia, sleeping in the small apartment she had left behind for work, trusting her entirely. Her debts, her fear, her bruises, her nights in the club, they had all been for her sister's safety. And now, Min-jun offered a solution, however unconventional, however terrifying. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet but steady. I'll do it, she said. I'll survive. And I'll protect my sister. That's all that matters. Min-jun nodded once, sharply. Good. Understand this, Amara. You are now part of a game far larger than Lux, far larger than Jae-hyun, far larger than the debts you've endured. Your position comes with power and danger. Do not mistake one for the other. Her heart raced. Fear and anticipation tangled inside her like fire and ice. The deal had been made. Her debt had been erased, but her life had been bound to the most powerful man she had ever met. A mafia boss, calculating and dangerous, with enemies at every corner. As she left the office, her mind spun. She felt relief, but also a lingering dread. Jae-hyun would not forgive this. Mr. Han would not forget. And the family she was about to marry into, they would not welcome her easily. Amara had survived the streets. She had survived the club. She had survived debt. But now she was entering a new world, a world where survival required cunning, courage, and the ability to play a game where every move could be deadly. Her debt was gone, but in its place came a far greater challenge, marriage into the most dangerous family in the city. And for Amara, the real test was just beginning. The wedding was quiet, almost stark. No grandeur, no spectacle. The ceremony took place in a private villa, high above the city, where only those who mattered could enter. Amara's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the hem of her dress, the delicate fabric brushing against her arms like a whisper of the life she had left behind. Nia's safety had been promised. Her debts were erased. Yet her heart raced with fear. She wasn't marrying for love. She was marrying into a world she barely understood, a world of power, betrayal, and silent threats. Jae-hyun's face was pale with fury when he entered the villa. His lips pressed into a thin line, eyes burning with anger as he saw Amara standing beside Kang Min-jun, the man he had underestimated for too long. For the first time, Amara realized how little power Jae-hyun truly held in this world. She felt a strange surge of satisfaction, a quiet, dangerous thrill. You can't do this, Jae-hyun spat, stepping forward, his voice trembling with rage. She's mine. She's just a girl you're using. Min-jun's gaze was icy, measured. She is not yours, Jae-hyun, he said, his voice calm but unyielding. She never was. Amara's pulse pounded. The air was thick with tension, the silence of the room heavy with the weight of unspoken threats. Every family member, every shareholder, watched quietly, waiting for a reaction. This was more than a wedding. It was a declaration. A shift of power that no one could ignore. The ceremony proceeded with chilling precision. Amara repeated the vows without speaking, her eyes steady, her mind calculating. This marriage was a shield. A weapon. A chain that bound her, yes, but also a chain that gave her leverage she hadn't possessed before. Jae-hyun seated quietly throughout, his fists clenched at his sides. Every glare, every whispered insult from him was absorbed by Min-jun, who simply nodded once in acknowledgement, letting the fury simmer. Amara understood immediately, the father's patience was dangerous. Waiting for the perfect moment to act was far more lethal than any immediate retaliation. After the ceremony, Min-jun led Amara to her new quarters. The rooms were luxurious, but cold, the furnishings sparse yet elegant. The walls bore the quiet weight of history, power, and expectation. Amara unpacked her small bag, placing Mia's photo in a prominent spot, a reminder of why she had survived, and why she had agreed to this marriage. Later that night, Jae-hyun confronted her privately. His voice was low, dangerous. Do you think this changes anything? You'll never be safe. Not from me. Not from this family. Not from him. Amara met his gaze steadily. I survived the club. I survived debt. You don't scare me anymore, Jae-hyun. His lips curled in a bitter laugh. We'll see how long that lasts. That night, as Amara lay in bed, she reflected on the shift that had occurred. She had moved from victim to participant. From pawn to a player. Min-jun's presence was both a shield and a challenge. She had protection, yes, but survival here required more than hiding. It required understanding, foresight, and courage she wasn't sure she fully possessed yet. And yet, despite the fear, she felt a spark of strength. She had survived against impossible odds before. She could survive this. She would survive this. Amara had entered the lion's den. Jae-hyun's fury burned behind every glance. And in the shadows of Kang Min-jun's empire, she would soon learn that power and danger were inseparable, and that one misstep could cost her everything. The phone call came late at night, piercing the quiet of Amara's new quarters. Her hand trembled as she lifted it, and a cold dread filled her chest. Your husband, he's been admitted, the voice on the line said, careful, professional. Serious condition. We've flown him to a private hospital outside the city. He needs someone to oversee the arrangements. You're the only one who can do it. Amara's mind raced. Kang Min-jun, the man whose presence had shifted her life, whose silent strategies had protected her, was vulnerable. The thought of losing him, even in a world where he had never loved her, sent chills through her body. This was the first time she realized that the game she had stepped into was far bigger than she had imagined. Within hours, she was in a sleek private jet, the city lights shrinking below her as she flew toward the hospital. Every detail was precise: doctors, private security, surveillance. The hospital was more fortress than medical center, reflecting the delicate balance between life and danger in Min-jun's world. When she arrived, she saw him, Kang Min-jun, lying frail on the pristine white sheets, a shadow of the man who had commanded entire families and corporations with a glance. Yet even weak, his presence exuded authority. Nurses and doctors moved around him with exacting precision, but it was Amara who felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. You've come, he said quietly, eyes sharp even through pain. Good. I need you to understand something. My empire is not just about me. It's about trust. And right now, you must prove yours. Amara swallowed hard. Her debts had been erased, her safety ostensibly guaranteed, but this was different. This was life and death on a scale she had never experienced. She nodded, stepping closer. I know, she said softly. I'll do whatever it takes. And she did. Over the following days, Amara moved through the hospital with careful precision. She coordinated security, oversaw treatments, handled threats that lurked in whispers from outside the gates. She learned quickly that the danger wasn't just from the street, it was from those within the empire, those who resented her presence, those who still looked down on her as an outsider. Jae-hyun, of course, did not remain idle. He attempted subtle maneuvers, spreading rumors, trying to undermine her influence. But every time he stepped forward, Amara acted with the lessons she had learned in the club, in the streets, and from Min-jun's quiet tutelage. Her presence was no longer just tolerated, it became necessary. And yet, danger loomed in ways she could not see. Min-jun's illness was real, yes, but the timing was suspicious. Whispers of attacks, rival shareholders' schemes, and the shadows of the city's underworld seeped into the sterile hospital walls. Someone wanted him weak, someone wanted her vulnerable. The realization made her stomach knot with fear, but it also sparked determination. Amara understood something crucial in those days: survival was no longer enough. To thrive here, she had to anticipate, outthink, and act decisively. Every choice, every step, could mean the difference between life and death, not just for her, but for Kang Min-jun, for Nia, and for the fragile new empire she had married into. By the time Min-jun began to recover, he looked at her with a mixture of respect and calculation. "You've done well," he said, faintly smiling. "You are more than I expected. Perhaps, you are indispensable." Amara's chest swelled with a cautious pride. For the first time, she understood her place, not as a victim, not as a pawn, but as a player. And yet, even as relief settled in, the whispers of danger reminded her, in this world, no one truly sleeps safely. Min-jun survived the hospital. Amara had proven herself, but the enemies, both visible and hidden, were far from done. And in the shadows of the empire, a new threat was stirring, one that could shatter everything she had fought for. The city lights glimmered beneath the towering skyscrapers, reflecting the hidden currents of power, fear, and ambition that shaped every corner of Kang Min-jun's empire. Amara stood on the balcony of the family villa, gazing down at the streets where she had once wandered as a frightened girl. She no longer belonged there. She belonged here, inside the heart of shadows, a world ruled by calculation, wealth, and silent danger. Her hands were steady now, her mind sharp. She had survived Lux, Jae-hyun, Mr. Han, and even the hospital that had threatened to undo everything. Every lesson she had learned, the careful observation, the quiet obedience, the strategic thinking, had prepared her for this moment. Inside, the villa buzzed with tension. Jae-hyun paced the main hall, fists clenched, eyes full of fury. Every member of the family watched quietly, the air heavy with anticipation. Min-jun remained seated at the head of the room, frail but commanding, eyes fixed on Amara as she entered. "You've done well," Min-jun said, his voice calm, carrying authority even in weakness. "But this is not the end. It is merely another beginning. Amara, show them your strength." Amara stepped forward, her presence confident, every step deliberate. Jae-hyun's glare burned into her, but she met it without flinching. "I am here," she said firmly, "not as a pawn, not as a victim, but as part of this empire. Anyone who underestimates me will learn quickly that survival is only the beginning." A murmur ran through the room. Some whispered approval, others fear. Amara knew the power she held now wasn't just because of Min-jun, it was because she had survived, adapted, and proven herself indispensable. Jae-hyun's fury escalated. "This is impossible. She's just a girl," he shouted. "You can't." "Enough," Min-jun interrupted, his voice slicing through the tension like steel. "She is more than anyone here gives her credit for. And you, Jae-hyun, will learn to respect that, or you will face consequences you cannot escape." Amara felt a strange mix of satisfaction and tension. She had stepped fully into the world she had once feared. And yet, she knew power was fragile, trust was rare, and enemies were everywhere, even among family. Over the following days, Amara began asserting herself in subtle but firm ways. She monitored the club operations, oversaw financial transactions, and carefully navigated the delicate relationships within the family. Each step she took was measured, strategic, a reminder to Jae-hyun and anyone else who doubted her that she was no longer vulnerable. Then came the whispers of betrayal, minor attacks, sudden financial threats, subtle sabotage. Amara handled them swiftly, quietly, without drawing unnecessary attention. Each obstacle she overcame strengthened her position, proving to everyone, including Min-jun, that she was a player, not a pawn. That night, as she returned to her quarters, she paused by the window, gazing out at the city. Mia was safe, her debts erased, and her life had transformed beyond recognition. But Amara knew the shadows never slept. The world she had entered demanded vigilance, cunning, and courage at every turn. A soft knock at her door revealed Min-jun, his expression unreadable. "You've done well," he said quietly. "Better than I expected. Perhaps, you are exactly what this family needs." Amara met his gaze. "I survived everything. I can survive this too." He nodded, faintly smiling. "Good. But remember, power is never given. It's taken. And in our world, one misstep can cost everything." Amara's chest swelled with a mixture of fear, determination, and triumph. She had entered the shadows as a frightened girl, but she would not leave powerless. She had learned that survival was not enough. In this empire, only those who acted decisively, who understood the game, and who embraced the darkness could thrive. Amara had claimed her place in the shadows. But in a world ruled by secrets, power, and betrayal, the game was far from over. What would you do if you were forced to fight for survival and power every single day? Leave your thoughts in the comments section and don't forget to subscribe to this channel.